Hi, welcome back. Or if you're just joining, my name is Maya, and welcome to my channel, Cranleyplace, where I'm focused on Hermès scarf style, knot tutorials, and more. In today's video, I'll talk about my top picks for Hermès's Spring-Summer 2023 season now that we're at a point where we've had a little time and perspective to get over, well, at least for me, the inevitable first reaction of loving everything. Several of you have asked about what I would choose, so without further ado, let's get started. There are always a few key factors that influence my scarf choices, which obviously may be very different for you. First, if I even like something, especially when it's very early in the season, I typically don't buy immediately, simply because I like to get an idea of all, or at least as many as possible, colorways that will be available for the scarves that I'm interested in. By waiting, first off, I avoid completely impulsive purchases, and second, this is a great way, for me at least, to avoid buyer's remorse. I will say this tendency does have to be balanced with waiting too long, which has also happened to me. Sometimes I've waffled too long to make a decision and simply missed out on a particular size or colorway. And again, while it is possible to find wish list items with the help of a good Hermes sales assistant or later in the secondary market, more often than not, you do end up paying a premium. Be sure to check out my videos on shopping the pre-loved market and weeding out the fakes if you haven't already seen them. I'll put links to both in the description below. Two other considerations for me. First, my budget is not unlimited, and I'm definitely not one to go into debt for luxury items, period. I am more than fortunate with what I already have, so anything else at this point really is bonus in my view. And second, this is all about curating my collection. So I try to make thoughtful choices when it comes to formats and colors, especially when I feel like I'm overly saturated, no pun intended, in certain hues or sizes. You likely have different priorities and certainly colors and formats that you prefer. But that said, here are my top picks from the Spring-Summer 2023 Hermès scarf collection. This is a design that immediately caught my eye early in the season. By newcomer Hermès artisan Thibaut Huchard, it's inspired by Camille Saint-Saëns' original score of the same name, composed in 1886. A zoological fantasy called the Carnaval des Animaux, or Carnival of Animals, comprised of 14 movements. Now, the movements cover a full range of animals from the lion, hens and roosters, donkeys and swift animals, tortoises, the elephant, kangaroos, aquarium fish, animals with long ears, and birds of all kinds, such as the cuckoo and the swan. And in perhaps what can be taken as the composer's sense of humor, he also included pianists and fossils as part of this musical menagerie. Look closely at the scarf and you'll find the animals illustrated in this captivating scene. One of my personal favorites are the fossils. For some reason, it just makes me laugh to see a flock of them running around. So why do I like this scarf? First, I love the inspiration behind it. Whether you're a fan of Saint-Saëns or not, or even of classical music in general, just the illustration itself I find incredibly charming and beautiful. The fact that it's also an asymmetrical design means that it will have so many possibilities when it comes to tying it and showcasing different colors and patterns. Those of you who have been following my channel would probably guess that I would love the blue one, and you are so right. But as much as I love it, I won't get that one because of my no more blues rule. Too many blues in the collection, and I'm not willing to get rid of anything, so no dice there. And while I certainly wouldn't refuse any of the other colorways, right now I'm leaning towards the aqua, green, and yellow one. I love this 70-centimeter silk twill design by Cyrille, who has brought us the likes of Kellyanne Kalesh, Sot H, Josephine Dance, and more. Les Petit Papiers d'Hermès is a fabulous random scatter of illustrated catalogs from the Émile Hermès collection that have torn each other to shreds. We can catch glimpses of numbered horse bits, girths, bridles, blinkers, and drawbars. In my initial coverage of this design, I spoke a bit about chigiri, a Japanese art form in which the primary technique uses colored paper that is torn to create images and may resemble a watercolor painting. I also appreciate that torn paper art is something easily accessible that pretty much anyone can do and enjoy. Not necessarily in the image of a watercolor painting, but if you like abstract art, this technique lends itself readily to that vein. It's also a fun and easy activity for little ones if you have kids. Anyways, this too I like for its asymmetry and also the fact that I don't really have many of the smaller format scarves like this in my collection. I also love the contrast hems. Granted, I probably haven't seen all of the colorways at this point. I've only seen 4 options so far, but if I chose one today, it would be the beige, rose, coral, and yes, pale blue, which I can justify to myself since it's really almost a tertiary color in this colorway. It may not come as a surprise that I have at least one double-faced scarf on this list. I'm drawn to this mechanical design because it reminds me of my dad who passed away last year and was quite the car aficionado. With the double-faced formats, of course, you get twice the bang for your buck with the contrasting sides. And I love that you almost want to show the other side just for the contrast. If you haven't yet seen my knot tutorial with a double-faced scarf, check out the link in the upper corner here. I've only seen this in a handful of colorways, so I do suspect that there may be more. But if I were to choose one today, I would get the Bouton d'Or Anis, an orange colorway. I especially love the pale side of it with its delicate greens, creams, pink, and red. Here's another double-faced scarf by Faivre, who, as I've mentioned before, is one of my favorite Hermès artists. This design is inspired by landscapes around a village in the south of France that was effectively the birthplace of the avant-garde art movement that would become known as Fauvism. What I like about this scarf comes down to a few things. First, of course, is the artist. I am a huge fan of her aesthetic and admittedly have several of her designs already in my collection. Second, I enjoy the Fauvist inspiration behind the design and how she's captured that spirited boldness, especially in the flip side of the scarf. And third, it's a double face, of which I only have 2 at this point. So right now, I'm looking to try on the vanilla, bergamot, and coral colorway. Next up is this 140 centimeter cashmere shawl by artist Tong Ren. With the title translating to My First Galop, he offers a glimpse of this graceful horse drawn in very simple lines, which upon closer inspection reveal meticulously detailed motifs. Tong Ren is of Chinese origin, and I mention this only because the design reminds me of a Chinese Tang horse. The horse has always played an important role in the traditions and history of mankind, and no less so in the case of China. With the exception of the dragon, a mythical animal, the horse is one of the most recurrent animals in the Chinese world, having been present from the dawn of Chinese culture, both on a mythical and symbolic level. Now, this scarf I've seen in at least 5 colorways at this point, and although there will likely be at least a couple more, ultimately, if I were to choose today, I would get the predominantly orange colorway, which again does have a touch of blue, darn it, but since it's not the main color, I could probably convince myself. This next one is my top pick from the men's collection this season. It's a 100 centimeter cashmere inspired by horse objet found within the Émile Hermès collection. I love the freehand stroke style of it and find the rocking horses a charming reminder of carefree childhood days. This too I've only seen so far in a handful of colorways, and unfortunately for me, they all have a touch of blue in them. I'm looking to try on the brightly colored yellow, orange, and blue one, but we'll see how that works out. I will also add that while I love the 100 centimeter cashmere that I got last season from the men's collection, I don't necessarily think that this format is the greatest deal for the money. If budget isn't a big deal for you, then feel free to fast forward to the next part, but if you're like me, I consider these things. In the US, these are about $800 for a 100 centimeter scarf. I could spend about the same and get a giant cashmere triangle, or split up the funds and get a 70 centimeter and some Twillies, or other combinations of scarves. If you haven't seen my video, be sure to check out my ranking of 20 Hermès scarf sizes and formats from the most expensive to the best value for the money. I wanted to include a giant triangle on this list since this is a format that I like a lot and only have one of in my closet. If you haven't seen my knot tutorial with a giant triangle, I'll include a link in the upper corner here. Now in this design, Pierre-Marie has taken 10 illustrations from his past designs and transformed them into half-face masks. Several reasons why I like this one. First off, I love that it reprises so many of his gorgeous illustrations in one scarf, and that they're reimagined in these masquerade ball masks that in some cases remind me of birds or butterflies. Second, I like how lightweight this format is compared to the 140 centimeter cashmeres. It's still a generous size and very wearable. Then the asymmetry is another reason. When you start playing with how you fold and tie the scarf, you can get some very different looks, which is fabulous. And sometimes it's like you almost have a completely different scarf. Anyways, I do quite like the Marine, Naturel, and Roux colorway, done it again with a navy blue. So for this one, I plan to try on either the orange or natural multicolor colorways. Those also have blue. Unfortunately, I just can't seem to get away from it. In the meantime, I will also add that if this one doesn't work out, I wouldn't say no to the Breeds A Destin Giant Triangle by Daisuke Nomura, or even the 90 centimeter silk quill that I talked about the other week. But there I go again, getting slightly out of hand with my picks. I could probably go on, but it would likely do no good for either your wallet or mine, so I'll stop there. If you live in a hot climate, summer can be a bit more challenging to wear your larger format scarves. Not impossible, especially if you're in a highly air-conditioned environment, but sometimes less is more in hot weather, right? So having the option of the smaller formats is certainly a welcome addition to the mix in my mind. My personal picks amongst the 45 centimeters and Twillies this season. This first one I haven't talked about. It's a 45 centimeter silk twill, which newly popped up on some of the European websites. It's a reprise of a 90 centimeter silk twill design of the same name from last season. I like that they've made it available not only in this smaller format, but also that they're offering some different colorways than its larger cousin. Personally, I'm leaning towards either the Cray or Rose Poudre colorways. They all have contrast hems, by the way, which is always a bonus in my mind. This next one I like because it gives anyone who liked the original design and wasn't able to collect the larger format a chance at it. It's available in some very delicate colorways, which are also quite lovely for summer. It feels like I'm crushing on pinks and yellows these days, so while I wouldn't say no to any of the colorways, I am leaning towards either the abricot or rose colorways. Bonus points again for all of them having contrast hems. This one I mentioned last week, and although I do still suspect that there will be a larger format of this still to come, I just love that little owl that peeks through and the patterns on this design. Even though the Twillies on a cost per square inch basis are rather expensive, one of the things that I appreciate about the smaller formats is precisely that you can play with colors that you might not necessarily try in larger formats. Some of you might look good in anything, and if so, lucky you, but for me, there are definitely colors that look better versus others just based on my skin and hair coloring. I would experiment with the Jaune Vif, Vert, and Miel colorway. I like all of these colors independently, but they're not necessarily something I would try in larger doses. We'll see. And this next one I also mentioned the other week and actually do have the 90 centimeter silk twill format. The main reason why I would consider getting it again, so to speak, is because of the different color options offered in this Twillie. I especially love the pink and red version. It still nominally has touches of blue, but so does pretty much everything else in the available selections this season. This is not surprising, of course, with blue routinely ranked as a preferred, if not favorite color globally over the years. If my scarf collection and wardrobe are any indication, it's one of mine for sure. So there you have it. My top picks of the Spring-Summer 2023 scarves from Hermes. Please like the video if you enjoyed it and let me know what you think in the comments. In my next episode, I'll talk about my thoughts on future grails for this season, so be sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks again for joining me today. Until next time!